There will be problems in life. Every single person in this world experiences fear. Every single person in this world experiences uncertainty. Every single person in this world experiences pain. What differentiates the people who sink further than the people who rise above it are how you react to it. This just goes to show how powerful your mind is. You can sit down and make your heartbeat pick up just from your thoughts if you're thinking of the future and if you're thinking of the past. And that's why we tend to feel anxiety, because we are thinking about the future too much. I want to start with how I've been feeling and what propelled me to come up with this topic and what propelled me to write about this today, because I'm at a point in my life where a lot of change is happening. I'm turning 25 in less than a month. I'm finishing college after dropping out since the age of 18 3 times, moving countries, trying to go to college in Germany and not liking that experience. And finally, I'm finishing college by the time you hear this in a week. And I'm embarking on a journey of complete freedom. No college to tie me down, no job to tie me down. I can go wherever I want. And I would consider myself quite receptive to change. I like the unknown. But of course, this is a never before experienced moment for me in my time of life. And over the last few weeks, I felt a certain nervousness bubbling under my skin. I felt fear in my belly come up every so often, and I didn't know what it was. And I don't like to feed negative emotions, so I would quickly dismiss it, but it wouldn't stop it from resurfacing over time. I tried my best to ignore it. And during the conversation I recently had with a friend, I told him how I feel, and I told him I was feeling this nervousness and this fear that I really couldn't pinpoint what the cause was. And they said to me, it sounds like I've been feeling anxiety. And as somebody who doesn't like to label things or give these feelings more attention, for certain reasons, maybe it's a part of my ego, but I also do believe that feeding into things only makes them bigger. But this did make me think a little bit, because these are words we've heard before. Anxiety is something that I've heard before and never really would say I felt it before or could relate, so I didn't really pay any attention to it. I have never had the need to look into it, never had the urge to address it, because it's something that I didn't feel a lot in my life, or haven't felt a lot, or maybe I just didn't know that's what it was. But for the sake of this podcast, we're going to address it as anxiety. That's what I've been feeling, and that's what I felt. And I really wanted to address it before it built a permanent home in my mind and in my body, because I did not like the feeling. I like feeling free. I like feeling calm. I like feeling present in my body. But at this point in time, I'm letting down my sails and I'm embarking on an ocean, not sure of where I'm going to end up, which is quite exciting. But there's a certain level of fear and a certain level of trepidation that comes with that. And I think that's where the mild anxiety came from. And it gave me a new perspective, because like I said, I have not experienced this before. And there's a bit of ignorance regarding how I looked at it, because I've heard of anxiety, but I just dismiss these things as, oh, people are being too hysterical or people are being too emotional. But experiencing it for myself gave me a new perspective. It gives me empathy. It gives me more understanding. And it's something that's very common. Fear. That's really what it is. Anxiety is fear. For me, that's how I look at it. It's fear of the future. Maybe not. It's not like fear like you're facing a dragon, but there may be instances of fear underneath the surface that you really haven't pinpointed and you're neglecting, and they're causing you to feel a certain level of fear that you may not address. And that's what happened to me. Luckily, I have come across fear before and certain feelings in books. Granted, I didn't pay too much attention to it, but there was a book I read called The Power of Now that has spoken about these feelings that we experience in life: fear, depression, anger. And traditionally, since I read this book when I was 22 years old, I try to read it every year around my birthday because it really soaks me in present and it really plants my feet on the ground. And I picked this book up recently and I'm currently reading it, which is great because it's quite fresh in my mind. And this book reminded me of the tools needed to vanquish the fear I had, vanquish the anxiety, vanquish the nerves. And I'm so excited to express and hopefully teach the things that I did to get rid of this fear, because I feel so calm right now. I feel so free. I feel light. I don't feel fear, and nothing has changed in my life. All that has changed is my perspective and the mental tools I reminded myself of and I learned from this book. So this episode is going to be based on ways we can stop being anxious, tools that we can use to stop being anxious. When I first read this book in 2021, I've said this story a billion times. You could literally feel rays emanating from my body. The sense of glory was palpable, and that palpable is a word where people can feel energy. That's my understanding of it. And people could feel energy where I would go. People were gravitating to me, and this is not to impress anybody. This is the reality. Look at this as an objective human being. Look at this as a random person. When you are present and you are free and you are unburdened with the future or the past or fears and anxiety, you are light, and people gravitate to that. Take away me from the equation. That is available to you. And granted, I haven't read this book in a while, but it was so impactful that presence is one of the things written on my poster. If you're watching this podcast, because I'm actually going to put this one on YouTube. Presence is something that I write often, but I do not actually practice it as intentionally as I should. I try to sprinkle presence in my life, but the tools that I'm going to explain are things that I've used again to help me. This book and what I'm going to say and these tools, they're very visceral, and visceral is a word that I like a lot because I'm not an intellectually smart person. I'm a very visceral person, and visceral means emotion, feeling. I'm a feeler. I never did well in school. I was never an academically astute person, but I'm an intuitive person. I'm a feeler. And that's probably why I love books like this, because this book isn't like add 2 + 2 and 1. This book is visceral. I recommend this book heavily. It's in my top 5 books I've ever read. Some people I've spoken to find it hard to get the juice from it that I've been lucky to get. And that's because you have to read this book slowly. You have to read this book with a complete open mind, and you have to be wet clay. That's a phrase I'm going to use a lot throughout Nothing to the Grave. Wet clay. We need to remain wet clay, moldable, forever moldable. So if you are going to pick up this book, read it slowly. Read it slowly, even if it's 5 pages a day, 10 pages a day. Read this book slowly. If you don't, it's like going to a therapist at a rock concert. You're not going to be able to focus. You're not going to be able to immerse yourself into the teachings and the understanding. So please pick up this book, The Power of Now, and read it slowly because it's very visceral. And the things that I have learned from it and the things that are beneficial are visceral. You're going to have to feel, and you're going to have to be present in your body, and you're going to have to give yourself the space. So the first thing that we need to do to stop feeling anxious is be present. When you watch your mind, right, observe your mind, observe your thought patterns today, recently, before you picked up this podcast, even as you're listening to it, our minds are racing to the future. You're placed in the future or you're in the past. Our minds are rarely in the present. And that's why, like the author of this book says, that's why people do things like bungee jumping, drugs, alcohol, these high adrenaline activities plunge us into the present moment, because those are the most blissful moments. That's where joy is. That's where love is. That's where creativity is. All these things that are the epitome of life are found in the present moment. And the present moment is accessible to us at our will. It's quite an interesting book because it's so powerful. And I love the way the book is called The Power of Now, because, like, yes, presence. When you think about it, it's such a broken mental pattern, because of course we need to be practical and incorporate thoughts of future in our mind and be prudent in terms of how we plan. But we take it to an extreme level. Even in relationships, even in planning with your friends, it's constantly, okay, oh, when we do this, we're going to find happiness in the future. Or like you're going to the past, either to pull good memories or to pull memories of sadness and anger to make you angry in the present. Like, you can sit down. This just goes to show how powerful your mind is. You can sit down and make yourself feel and make your heartbeat pick up just from your thoughts, if you're thinking of the future and if you're thinking of the past. And that's why, me included, and that's why we tend to feel anxiety, because we are thinking about the future too much. We're overthinking about the future. Like for me, I'm thinking, what if I don't get a job? What if I'm broke? What if I don't find my way? That's what was making me feel anxiety, because I was not in the present often enough in recent weeks. We need to incorporate presence in everything we do. When people see me outside and they see me dancing and they see me in a euphoric mood, it's because I'm present in the moment. I'm not thinking about how I look. I'm not thinking about anything else. I'm literally just melting into the moment. I try my best. And to make this practical now, because saying being present, okay, how can we be present? This is the value in it. The most popular way of being present is meditation, i.e. going within your body. Because when you think about it, we live very external worlds, looking at things, listening to things, looking at the world around us, but we never actually go within our body. How does our body feel? Follow our breathing. How does your breath feel? How does your skin feel? How do your fingers feel? How do your fingertips feel? Your toes feel? And these things pull you into the present. Listen around you in this current moment. All these things make you more present. And this may last for seconds. This is a muscle. As you do it, you're going to notice things pulling you out of present moments, thoughts of the future, thoughts of the past, certain things coming into your mind. That is normal. That just goes to show how incessant the mind is and how endless the mind's hammer is, because we can't even be present for a few seconds naturally unless we train ourselves. I was watching a gorgeous documentary. There was a Buddhist monk, and scientists looked at his brain when he was 50 years old, and he'd been meditating for decades at this point, and he had the brain of a 33-year-old man when he was 50. In this book, Eckhart Tolle says it's sad because the world only values things that can be measured in a science lab. That's why so many people don't believe in intuition or believe in these things. But how can anybody think that everything that matters in this world can be measured by a lab? There are certain things we feel that we can't even explain. There are certain things in this, many things. How can we even explain? Life is ridiculous. Don't even get me on a rabbit hole. But these things, mindfulness, meditation, have scientific proof, ironically, that they are beneficial for your mind. You will feel your body. When I do it and I plunge into my body, I literally start feeling my body twitch. I can feel my body pulsate. Not because my body starts pulsating when I dive into present, but because I just notice it more. These things enrich your life. And Eckhart Tolle says a great way to gauge if you're successful and doing this in a productive way is to ask yourself how much peace you feel. So after doing this, ask yourself, okay, do I feel peace? And as we improve at becoming more present, we'll become more peaceful. Right now, before I recorded this podcast, I did this. Sat down, closed my eyes, just looked at my breathing. And I hate the way some people look at these things like, oh, hippie, like don't get me started. Hopefully if you're here, you're an open-minded person. I wasn't born like this. These are things I learned. And this book has sold millions of copies. If you don't believe me, do you believe Oprah? She's a millionaire. Okay, I'm not a millionaire. If that's what you need convincing of. This book and these teachings are really, really beneficial and life-changing. I said it in a YouTube video before. Kendrick Lamar hired this guy to be his therapist. This is real life. This is life-saving stuff. I'm telling you, this has literally made me so calm in the space of like 2 days of starting to reread this book again and remind myself of the tools and being present, focusing on being present. And that's why I'm saying it to you guys right now, because this is what I feel in this current moment. And that's what this podcast will always be about, what I feel in a current moment and what I feel can be helpful to people in a current moment. Number one, be present. Dive into your body. How does your body feel? And not only that, listen. Dive into silence. Listen to the birds. Listen to the wind. Those are ways of being present, because your mind is always trying to clung to the future. And this book has so many different elements. Today's element is how we can use the teachings of the present to vanquish and get rid of anxiety. Number 2, on how to get rid of anxiety or how to diminish it. Watch our minds. And I said this is a very visceral and I don't want to say spiritual, but let me say magical. Let me say magical concepts, because you have to enable your mind. This isn't something you're going to write down, I will do this a billion times like Bart Simpson on a whiteboard and all of a sudden it happens. You really have to engage with these concepts. Number 2, watch our minds. Like we briefly touched on in the first point, being present, your mind is not you. You are not your mind. When we see somebody on the street talking to themselves, we would automatically assume that person is crazy. But the difference between them and us is that you're just speaking your thoughts out loud. We have the same thoughts as them, except we just aren't saying it out loud. But what we need to look at is the thoughts. At any given moment, our minds are criticizing, thinking, overthinking things, fear, boosting our ego, thinking about how great we are, how much we're better at people, planning the future, this. Different kind of thoughts. And we feed into those thoughts, and those thoughts make us feel more fear, and that fear makes us feed into the thoughts. So it's just a self-perpetuating cycle of letting our thoughts go off the leash. This is a destructive pattern, identifying with your thoughts, and it's something I do. And it's ego. That's what ego is. And I don't know if people have heard the term ego death before. That's what it is. We need to watch our minds. Now, when a thought comes into my head, or when a thought comes into our heads, we need to say, okay, let this thought just go by. He says a wonderful analogy of your thoughts should be like you're watching a child play at a playground, and you just watch them. They may cry, they may huff and puff, they may do things, and you just watch them and you just smile. You are not your thoughts. Disidentify from your thoughts, because everybody gets crazy thoughts. What plunges us into fear and destructive patterns is feeding into them and not just being like, okay, this is a thought, let it pass. Simply put, let the thoughts pass. And the beautiful thing about this is that when you think intentionally and you let thoughts pass, that means your intentional thinking becomes so much more powerful. That's one thing I'm noticing just from the 2 days I've started rereading this book. Now when a thought comes into my head, I'm like, okay, do I actually want to think about this right now? And if not, I let it pass. And if I do, I say, okay, let me actually think about this intentionally. Do you know how fucking powerful that is? As I'm saying it, I'm like, what? Instead of just letting thoughts go in your mind like a hamster wheel, like a tornado. That means the quality of your thoughts are going to be nonsense. And the quality of our thoughts are going to be, the quality of our decisions are going to be nonsense, because our thoughts are controlling us. No. And I love that concept, disidentifying from your mind. Let your thoughts pass. Don't feed into them. Oh, it's such a gorgeous concept. I love this book. I literally might actually just start taking this book with me everywhere, because every time I read it, I'm like, I need to read this book more often than I do. We are not our minds. And that's the thing. I was probably over-identifying with certain thoughts. When a thought came into my head, I would feed into it more. Doubtful thoughts. Poison thoughts. Seeds. Planting the seed. Because that's what thoughts are. Thoughts are seeds. So if a thought enters your mind, you can either water that seed and make it grow, or you can ignore it. And the seed will eventually turn into nothing. It will be buried in the soil. So when you watch your thoughts, you'll be able to say, okay, this seed is beneficial for me. This seed is not. And you're going to be able to water the beneficial one. Being realistic, this I usually write my scripts a week in advance. But because my laptop was broken, I didn't have a script to write for today. But because I let my mind be present and I watched my thoughts, I was like, okay, this is what I'm feeling today. This is what I'm feeling today. I watered those seeds, and now I have a concept that's hopefully helping people. Watch your mind. Number 2, you are not your mind. Number 3, which is the last point, he says a glorious thing in this book that really helped me a lot. And I'm going to use a funny analogy here. One day I had a piece of lasagna in the fridge, and I just read this book. And I went down starving after a full day of work, and I opened the fridge and someone had eaten my lasagna. And usually I would get into a rage. I would be angry. I would huff and puff. But this point that I'm about to tell you is the reason why I didn't, because it says when we are in a situation in our life that we do not like, we have to try and change it. If we can't change it, we have to try and remove it. And if we can't do those, we have to accept it. And I love that concept because it's so applicable to so many different aspects in life. And it's something I forgot because very recently someone took my bananas in my house and I literally burst in anger. And I just remembered because I haven't been practicing these things. And like I'll say again, this is a muscle. This is not a perfect pill that you take once. It's like the gym. That's literally what it is. It's mental gym. Or mental exercise, let me say. We have to learn, and I love that because that was such a concept I had married in my mind. If we do not like something in our lives, we change it. If we cannot change it, we remove it. And if we can't remove it, we accept it. So what's the point of crying over spilt milk? What's the point of getting angry over something we can't change? And that was it. In reference to me, I can't change the future. I can't change whether I'm going to get a job or whether there are going to be waves on my voyage as I try and build a brand, try and become a successful artist, try and become a successful creator. I can't change that. Whatever happens is going to happen. All I can control is now, this present moment. All I can control is this present moment. So what's the point of crying over the future? What's the point of crying over the past? What's the point of crying over someone taking your lasagna from the fridge? Anger, just making yourself feel emotions you don't need to. And that's just the power of the mind. The mind is the most powerful thing we have. Everyone watches Marvel and watches Disney being like, oh, they have superpowers. We all have superpowers. Our minds. You can put two people in the same scenario and give them the same situation and they'll react to it completely differently just because of how they look at things. I'm telling you, I literally felt a bubbling anxiety in my body for the last 2 weeks and it's fucking gone because of these things. This is not here for magic. And I know this is a dense topic. I know it's a visceral topic. I know you can grasp these concepts with your hands. You're going to have to feel them in your body. You're going to have to feel them in your body. Our minds are not in control of us. We are in control of our minds. He says that our minds are tools. Our minds are tools to be used intentionally. He says that. He says the mind is a superb instrument if used rightly. Used wrongly, however, it becomes very destructive. To put it more accurately, it's not so much that you use your mind wrongly. You don't usually use it at all. Your mind uses you. End the story. That's why so many people fall into deeper anxiety, deeper fears, deeper worries. I can literally sit down here and make myself sit in a corner drenched with anxiety and drenched with fear. I could if I wanted to. Just continuously tell myself about the future. Worry. Just repeat it to myself. That's the power of the mind. But we also have the power to take that weight off us. Take that weight off us. Being present, watching our mind, watching our thoughts go by. Okay, because that's the thing. There will be problems in life. Every single person in this world experiences fear. Every single person in this world experiences uncertainty. Every single person in this world experiences pain. What differentiates the people who sink further than the people who rise above it are how you react to it. And the tools you have to react to it. Being present. Keeping a perspective. Don't extrapolate your situation. That means taking how you feel now and launching it into your future. Watch your mind. I love that concept. That's probably one of my favorites. Being present is obviously something, like if I got tattoos, I would literally tattoo now on my skin. Now. Be in the now. Be in the now. Be in the now. Be in the now. But the second point, each one of these points are absolutely glorious. Don't identify with your mind. Watch the thoughts go by. It's okay that thoughts will come into your head. That's normal. That's part of the human makeup. But then imagine every single thought that comes into your mind, you're going to build on, you're going to fester on, you're going to let grow into weeds in your mind. Just be like, okay, yeah, cool, pass by it, fuck it, go get, yeah. Or if a thought comes into your head, it could also be a gift. Watch your thoughts. Don't become your thoughts. And the most important thing, again, is remind yourself of these concepts. And we need to remind ourselves of these concepts continuously. He says, you also realize that all things that truly matter, beauty, love, creativity, joy, inner peace, arise beyond the mind. That means they arise from beyond the non-stop thinking that we have. Non-stop thinking we have. You can't think yourself into joy. You just can't do that. Maybe if you can, like, hit up NothingToTheGrave at gmail.com. Hit up NothingToTheGrave on Instagram. Tell me how. The only times I felt joy are when I was jumping into the ocean and all I could think about was that present moment. When I was in love with the present moment with my family at that point, I wasn't thinking about anything. I was in the present moment. That's it. Number one, how to quench your anxiety. Get rid of anxiety. Be present. Number two, do not identify with your thoughts. Watch your thoughts. And number three, if you cannot change a situation you don't like, remove it. And if you can't remove it, accept it. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. My biggest hope is that at least one thing made sense, because this is such a powerful concept and powerful concepts. And thank you so much for listening. It's so amazing and so, like, not thrilling. It's more so just glorious to see people actually listening to this podcast on a weekly basis. I don't care about numbers. Maybe I should start at a certain point, because, like, I want this to be a career. A career. I don't even like that. I want this to help me live, I guess. Career sounds too corporate. But it's so cool to see people actually listen to this podcast. And please, feedback, because ultimately I like doing this, but I would not be doing this if I did not want people to get something from it. Thank you so much for listening. My name is Jesse Ojuka, and this is Nothing to the Grave podcast.